Alright, so this is going to be my review of the final issue of the Fiendship is Magic stories, and this one is all about Queen Chryislis, yeah. Now, this story is more of an epilogue piece to the first story arc in the series, kind of like how in the Nightmare Moon issue it was more of a prologue to it was more of a prelude to the second story, the Nightmare Rarity story arc. This one is the epilogue piece, and it pretty much picks up where the first story arc left off, is that we see Chryislis and the Changelings have pretty much have more or less, they've been quarantined in their castle by Princess Celestia and her guards. And the main six are there to gain some information on her, and they discover that Chryislis she's dying. She's actually dying, or so they think. I'll get to that in a minute, but yeah, they want to get some information on Chryislis. They want to know more of her backstory and, you know, the stories of how it all happened, of what kind of, you know, made her what she is. So the story starts out with them talking to Chryislis, and Rainbow Dash talks about the Changelings' first attack on Pony Kind, which is in a place called Timbuktu. And there's a hilarious joke where Twilight starts talking, and she's like, "Once 1,000 years ago," and Spike goes, "Really? 1,000 years ago? Did anything go right that year?" And then Rainbow Dash cuts in when this Twilight tries to tell the story, and she's like, "Nah, move over, Egghead, I got this." And the whole story of the Changelings' first attack on this Pegasus country called Timbuktu, they pretty much, and they actually allude to the Changelings actually killing ponies. They actually kind of allude to that, and the artwork in here, I love the artwork in here. It's again Katie Cook, who's been writing the current comics, and the current artist as well. And the Changelings look terrifying, and you can clearly tell in this comic that that Katie loves writing Queen Chryislis. And in here, in this story, when they're doing the siege of Timbuktu, you pretty much see that, you know, this character King Orion is more or less, and him and his Pegasus are pretty much, they're wiped to the floor, or they're wiped out more or less. And then we get to another story of this place called Trot. And it's pretty much a parody of Troy, and the Changelings, it's a unicorn, this time it's a unicorn country, and they can actually see through the Changelings' disguises. And what happens is that what Chryislis' grand idea is make a wooden horse for their version of the unicorn's leader. And yeah, I find it all. There's some great jokes in here. Like one of the guards of this arrogant unicorn king he basically says, "Look, sire, we chased out the Changelings yesterday, and now just today this shows up. Do you think this is a little inconspicuous?" He's like, "Nonsense! It's a magnificent piece of artwork." And the guard goes, "Someone get Celestia on the phone." So again, the Chryislis and her Changelings just wipe out this kingdom, and this time around, Celestia comes in and actually banishes the Changelings to. They actually banish her to a volcano, and from there, she goes into explanation of how she escaped. How she escaped is basically she tricked a dragon into opening up this volcano's sealed opening, and they all managed to escape. It was. There's also a great moment because this dragon named Sergio is more or less a parody of Smaug, and he says, "I'm a great fire drake from the north. No, you know, my armor is, you know, such and such." He does the whole Smaug thing, and it's hilarious. Chryislis also goes into we also finally get the origin of the Changelings, and it's told very It's told very simply. That the Changelings were born out of this evil root in the ground, and they came from a tree, and actually Starswirl was more or less responsible for creating the Changelings. Yeah, he was inadvertently responsible for creating the Changeling race, which, yeah, And yeah, and Chrysalis says, "Look, there's no, I wasn't a woman who was made bad. I was, there's no tragic bad story. I'm just simply the way I am." And I like that element. It's where you think we'd get this dark and this dark and tragic tale for Chrysalis, but no, they're just created. They're just made bad. That's how they are. It's kind of like with the Sombra story, where Sombra, no matter what he could do, he could not escape, his whole life of being this monster. He couldn't escape it. Whereas with Chrysalis, she was born that way and she don't care. And where Sombra was trying to fix himself and try to get away from that, but he couldn't escape his fate. Chrysalis, like I said, was just like, I'm just bad. That's how I look at the world. That is how I look at the world. And I'm just gonna eat people's love. And the swarm, make the swarm bigger. So that's pretty much what it boils down to. And it leaves off with the Chrysalis and her swarm escaping from their prison. And now I'm really curious: are they going to be playing a big part in the comics, or are they going to be coming back in the TV show? That's what I'm really curious about. That's what the one thing I'm curious about. Are they, is Chrysalis going to return in the comics, or is she going to show up in the TV show again? Because remember, she's still alive. It's not like with Sombra, who got blown the fuck up. But then again, in the comic, it shows that his horn is still alive, and that's still a connection to him. So for all we know, these comics could actually be a way, especially for Chrysalis and Sombra, that maybe they'll be coming back. Yeah, that might be a thing, is that these comics, especially Sombra and Chrysalis's, is that this is their way of bringing them back into the show, and maybe we'll get like a Masters of Evil lineup. Maybe we'll see Starlight Glimmer, she's talking with all these other people, and you find all these other characters, and you find out, oh, she's teamed up with Sombra, Chrysalis, the Sirens, Tirek, and God knows who else. But yeah. All in all, really good issue. Just one minor complaint with this comic. Just one minor complaint. There is an entire page dedicated to Rarity on this date where she just would not shut up and was convinced that this person was a changeling, even though it was more or less shown that it was Rarity's fault because she wouldn't stop talking about herself, and the poor guy was just couldn't. He was just so bored out of his mind. They had dedicated an entire page to that, and I was like, you could have done a little more you could have done something else other than that one little skit there, Katie. But all in all, I really did like this comic. All in all, and on a whole, I really like this event. So good on you, IDW. You did something really cool here. Really curious to see where you're going to go from here, especially with Chrysalis and Sombra's stories, whether it be in the comics or otherwise. Just all around, really excited to see what comes next. But anyway, once again, hope you all enjoyed this and the other past reviews for the series. And yeah, once again, hope you all enjoyed this, and I will see you guys later.